This conversation is titled Cosmic Connections, International Collaboration in a Multipolar Future. I'm really, really thankful to both Mohsen and Jean-Marc for joining for this conversation because you play such critical roles in the collaboration landscape in an increasingly multipolar world. A huge thank you to our partners and His Excellency Al-Alama's team, and thank you to Fred for opening. I think we have to be very, very honest with ourselves that geopolitical competition is built into the fabric of space exploration. It's part of the origin story. It's part of many of the success stories in space, just as much as international collaboration and figuring out how to balance between those two things. And so I'll open with a fairly broad question, which is, in 2025, it's been a completely remarkable year for space industry, for space science, for the growing body of work. It's also been a pretty extraordinary year for geopolitics here on Earth. What are you most excited about within your own day-to-day work? What are two of the successes in your own day-to-day work that show what we're doing in this space? And then second to that, are the international institutions that we work with in space fit for purpose for the amount of geopolitical competition that we have right now? Jean-Marc, I'll go to you first. Mohsen, I'll go to you second, and then we'll get into dialogue.
Thank you. Good morning, all of you. Thank you for having me today. It's a big honor to be present. In France and in Europe, more broadly, we had a wonderful 25-year space year. We've been able to conduct 3 Ariane 6 launches, including the launch of our last generation Earth observation military satellite. It was very important for us to do that. That was following the maiden flight of Ariane 6 in 2024. We waited a lot for that, so we were quite happy to have it very successfully. I'll just give a few examples of what we did in 2025. We issue a French space strategy that has been unveiled by President Macron in November during the inauguration of the new French Space Force Operation Center. And also we created a Space for Ocean Alliance because we consider, and we are not alone in that the ocean is in danger and that space application can really help for protecting the ocean. So that shows, the big variety of space activities from military, launchers, applications. And of course, we do much more on that, but I just chosen a few examples of 25 achievements.
Awesome.
25 was a busy year, like almost every other year, but ended with the successful launch of one of our flagship programs called the 813 Arab Satellite collaboration, or a program that was announced back in 2019 by His Highness Sheikh Mohammed as a gift to the Arab countries. It went through different challenges. I mean, this is the topic of today as well, when we go international collaboration and how that can sometimes hinder the process, the progress, and the timeline of such a mission, but then the outcome, and that you see the result of how it is worth it and worth the different challenges that we go through. In 2025, we started with the launch of 5 satellites at the same time from the UAE, and later on by March timeline from Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center, the launch of the Ittihad-Sat, the SAR program, or the SAR payload initiative that the MBRC team is leading. It's been, again, as I mentioned, busy year. Goes beyond that as well with a specific collaboration, but the theme of collaboration is labeled under each program that we initiate. Some of them CubeSat level programs with Al-Ain-Sat, for example, or the HCT-1 satellite. Those are purely meant for universities to be leading, and also collaboration on them as well, but on a different level. And that continues to be the theme, continues to be how the UAE was able to turn from an end user in the late 90s and just utilize satellites as an operator to being now part of the space race, being part of the space exploration program, the astronaut program, and with soon enough, the Artemis Accords and the Lunar Gateway program as well, where the UAE is providing and leading the airlock initiative.
Right. So all of those accomplishments are objectively very cool. The volume of launch, Satellite 813. Neither of you directly answered whether or not our international institutions or things like the Artemis Accords are fit for purpose given the geopolitics here on Earth. So we're going to come back to that. Jean-Marc, in a number of the tech policy conversations that we have in many of the other domains, the issue of sovereignty is coming up again and again and again and again. When we talk about cloud, when we talk about AI, when we talk about infrastructure build out, a large part of that conversation is digital sovereignty. So my question to you, and the French ecosystem has typically a very strong point of view on this issue of digital sovereignty in a number of other domains. My question to you is the concept of digital sovereignty right now antithetical to the concept of space collaboration? Are those two things against each other, or can they exist together?
Well, you know that France has been defending sovereignty in Europe from a very long time. I think we are maybe more listened today than a few years ago. That's good. It applies to all space domains, starting with access to space. Because if you do not have your own launchers, if you depend on third countries, you can be defended to access to space for all your applications, and we know that from the very long time. You know, CNES has been created in 1991 and has been tasked to develop the first French satellite and launcher, and we did it in 1995. And now sovereignty is about digital communications, but Earth observation and so on. So that's why in Europe we decided a few years ago to create a constellation of connectivity, sovereign connectivity, RISC-Square, under the umbrella of the European Commission. It's under development now, and it will be launched in 2030. So you see, it should apply to all aspects of space, but that does not prevent to cooperate. We have many cooperations around the world. We have 140 active cooperation agreements, including with the UAE on Moon rover. We are very well cooperating with the UAE. So, I mean, we do the both, and I think this is all about space. It's both cooperation and competition from the very beginning, as you said, and we are used in everyday life to do the two at the same time.
Mohsen, the space programs here in the UAE didn't exist 30 years ago, and now you're a leader in things like satellites orbiting Mars, mapping Mars, which is an incredible jump. And you're building strategy that leads out 100 years, building strategy in space for 100 years from now. That said, how do you handicap in a 100-year plan the amount of geopolitical competition that is happening around the world today? How do you kind of consider that when you're building strategy that is so forward-facing?
So, as you mentioned, the commitment the UAE that is putting in place with these long-term visions, the long-term plan, the 100-year vision for what we call the 2117 habitat on Mars, that is being realistic, that we need this vision and this objective and this timeline for us to be able to achieve that. But what that also is helping us in the UAE is understanding there is a timeline, there is a milestone for us to be able to be at the end milestone, which is 2117. So different programs has to come in place, different initiatives should be there, so we have that capability. So that's from that perspective that the UAE is committing to the space program. It's not a one-time off initiative. You can see it from the astronaut program, from the deep space program, from the Earth observation satellites, from the academia's part as well, the satellites that is developed by the universities. You're right. When we come up with these long-term plans, the way I view it personally, every single space mission is a risk management program. It's basically basing it on a risk. There is nothing guaranteed. There is nothing for sure. Things changes on daily basis. And I believe we from the UAE or from the Emirates Mars Mission program team faced some of those challenges because we needed to launch in 2020 a satellite that was co-developed with a team and universities in the US, brought it back to the UAE for the final testing and assembly of the HOPE probe. Then we needed to take that to Japan to launch it. So we were the only country that was dependent on different countries to be able to do so. And for some reason, COVID decided that that's the best year for it to happen as well. And we had one clear objective from our leaders of the UAE. We will be celebrating the 50th anniversary of the UAE by having a probe around Mars. So we knew we have to launch somehow. And risk management kicks in every single day. We were hearing different things, government shutting down, airports not accepting airplanes anymore. The priorities are not space exploration at that point for some countries. But this is where, again, the relationship that the UAE has been able to build with, again, these different countries, different elements that needed to be done, that we get the full support. And to me, I think this is what the UAE will continue doing. We are working very peacefully with every entity that is willing to work, that is willing to share knowledge, that is approving and accepting the concept of knowledge transfer. And that's been working out, and we will continue doing so, and that's why we're expanding the horizon as well. We're not dependent on specific entities, but we are always open for collaboration, and that's a main objective that actually we have from the Space Missions Department. It's an objective that we have clearly, that we need to have more collaborations as we move forward. And that is, I think, how we at least are able to mitigate these risks, and then be also capable of building some of these initiatives internal to the UAE, so we are not 100% dependent. So that's not the goal. The goal is we have our own capabilities, but for the bigger picture, for the bigger programs, for the flagship programs, let's see how we can collaborate on them, and international relations kicks in. And that's been successful so far, and I hope we continue to be able to do so as we move forward.
An Emirati research partnership with the University of Colorado, fabrication here and launch in Japan, all in a year when there were very little supply chain issues, very little logistical burden. It's an incredible feat. In an increasingly multipolar world for both of you, including binary competition or great power competition between US and China, is the way of space collaboration going regional, or will it remain truly international to the extent that it is right now? For instance, are we going to an era where GCC countries, for instance, will be collaborating more, or European countries will be collaborating more, and those collaborations will be more on a bilateral basis as opposed to truly international collaborations like the Artemis Accords? Jean-Marc, we'll go to you first.
So, in Europe, we are collaborating since a long time. We're the European Space Agency, which has 23 member states now. So we have quite a complex organization in Europe for space, with national agencies, ESA, and the European Commission. We should not forget the European Commission, because they are now leading a few flagship programs like Copernicus, Galileo, and the budget in Europe the European Commission is really increasing. It was much below the ESA budget, but now it's maybe becoming at the same level. So that's a complex organization. I mean, when you have to define a policy, you have to talk to a lot of people. It's probably more complex than in UA. But okay, we are able to do that. So I think that will last. Maybe we've seen during the last year some internal European competition. Especially in some specific domains like launchers. So I don't think it will last, because anyway, space is difficult, space is expensive, and it is very risky. So cooperation makes a lot of sense. So we have to maintain that at regional level and at international level. This is for sure.
Mohsen?
Yeah, not to differ from what was mentioned, but the UAE establishes different committees, different commitments when it comes to international collaboration. One instance, the Arab Cooperation Working Group, where we are, putting together every single country from the Arab region that is interested and is able to commit or wanting to be part of the space program, because as mentioned, space is expensive. It's not easy. Even leading agencies today are differing from being all sustained within one agency for funding perspective, for development perspective, and going wider now, because that makes more sense, and it's also a better approach that has been shown success, as we've seen from so many different programs. So the UAE is committed always to join all of these different working groups. Some of them are on a voluntary base, but again, transparency, communication is always helpful, being able to speak to each other. Sometimes we're not in agreement, sometimes we have different point of views. But to me, I think these working groups are an amazing place to be able to sit down and understand the different perspectives. Countries have their own priorities. Not every country has the same objectives as well. But once we are able to sit together and be able to talk to each other and be okay with not always accepting the different concepts, and I think that's one of the elements that the UAE continues pushing, maybe through different platforms, the COPUS, for example, through the United Nations. This is an actively UAE's engagement on being able to showcase what the UAE is aiming and wanting to do, and how we can make sure there is a clear alignment, and at least from the UAE, lead by example, be transparent as well on what is it that the UAE is wanting to do and how we can open up the horizon. So it is a challenge that we continue to be facing with, depending again on the geopolitical challenges that we face. It changes from a year to year, but it's never going to stop or hinder any process or progress. It will mean that we need to always have a backup plan. We have to have a different plan. How can we navigate and understand that will definitely happen at a time.
So one of the interesting through lines in both of your answers is kind of micro competition. In being transparent about micro competition, well, we're talking about big global competition and whether the US or whether China's going to position in a certain way. Talking about competition between member states in particular or different Arab states, I want to reassure you that that is a challenge that we have in the United States as well. If you talk to colleagues from the state of Alabama or the state of Colorado right now, they are pretty transparent about how they're competing with each other, even within the United States in space competition, and who gets which parts of space agencies, et cetera. And so just to carry on that through line, I don't think any of us are immune to it. To wrap up, one final question, to come back to a question that respectfully we all dodged. What is the biggest inhibitor to collaboration in space? And are institutions like the Artemis Accords still fit for purpose, or do we need something different? Mohsen, we'll start with you, Jean-Marc, to end.
To me, it does fit for purpose. I mean, it's showcased how different countries, the UAE was right on board from the beginning to be part of the Artemis Accords, because we do believe, again, such platforms are necessary. The challenge is, again, as I mentioned, it's depending on the country's objectives and what is it that they have in mind. Some of those challenges are normally raised because of different point of views or opinions or directions, let's call them as well. To me, I think these are necessary. They are important, they're needed. Being able to not agree on every single thing is also really important. But again, we need a platform, we need a place to be able to talk to each other, to understand each other. And there are, some other different elements from the frequency allocation, for example. That's another challenge that, again, some are faced with, because not every single country is willing to talk about it as well. But we, again, the UAE, prefer such platforms. We join these platforms, become members of them as well, because we see the value of them, for sure.
Thank you. Jean-Marc?
I would say Artemis Accords are good. I mean, they support values of transparency, coordination, and so on. But I think there is an elephant in the room because China is not part of that. So big actor is not signatory of the accords. And I don't know if you have seen that China has announced last week that they will develop a constellation of 200,000 satellites. So we have a big issue in space about space debris and the way we manage that. And so we are not even speaking about space transportation management, space navigation management. We are just speaking about coordination. So this is a lowest level. And today, I think the only forum to do that is the UN. My colleague mentioned Copios. So this is a place where everybody is sitting. So I think this is probably the way we are going to face this issue of space debris. A better coordination between all actors in the world to avoid a catastrophe. Because in reality, the only limiting factor for space activities is a space debris issue. Otherwise, it will grow in all domains. But if we have one day one catastrophe on certain orbits, we stop all space activities. So it's our general common interest to better coordinate on that. And I don't think the Artemis Accord will do that because some countries are not part of that.
So the intent is there, but the scope and scale for what will become $1 trillion industry in the very, very near term is not totally there. I want to thank you for both of your work at UAE Space Agency and CNUS. I thank you all for joining. We'll turn back to Coley and get to the next conversation.
Thank you.